Hey, this is Dr. Chad McClellan with Chiropractic Nashville, and welcome back to Chats with Dr. Chad. Glad you guys could join us again. Today we get into more of the stuff that I guess maybe chiropractors are famous for. We're going to talk more about joints and bones and that type of thing today. And we've got some 5 really good questions, I think. So our first question I think is a really good one. Does chiropractic adjustments do chiropractic adjustments help keep the body healthy so that it can better fight physical problems? I think the reason that this is such a good question is I think the analogy is real easy to make. If you can imagine your car being out of alignment, and the more you drive on that, the tire is going to wear out, right? And it's going to wear out not evenly over the entire tire, but it's going to wear out on the sides, one way or another, one side or the other is going to wear out quicker. So now and then take that same tire, and as you're going around a turn too quickly, or you go over, hit a stone or hit a branch or something that you couldn't avoid in the road, or you come around a curve or even straightway and you hit a puddle. At any rate, you hit some water, and so then you hydroplane. Or when you hit that thing, it blows the tire. Or when you're coming around the curve too quickly, you skid out of control. At any rate, the car is then out of control, and you're going to have problems, and the tire's going to mess up, whatever. And it was all from that one physical little problem of the tire being worn worse than it should have been, worn more in one direction, worn more on one side than what it ought to have been. And so, because the tire was malaligned, then the rest of the car is not going to function as well as it should. It's not going to perform up to its capabilities. So now then imagine you with your knee or your hip or your ankle out of a line and you go run. You know, the first run isn't that bad. Maybe the 2 weeks of running isn't, maybe even 6 months. At some point, because of the wear on your ankle, it eventually gives way and you sprain your ankle, right? A lot of people will come in and they'll think that I was running today and I sprained my ankle just today. It happened. It's not an event. Sprains are typically not events. Being outside and a helicopter dropping on you, that's an event. Running and eventually having knee pain or knee trouble or ankle stuff or sprains are typically not events. It's because of wear and tear on the structural alignment that eventually just gives way after time, after it being misaligned. So we come back to a lot of things on that. Can chiropractic help that? Absolutely. Keep the bones, keep the joints, keep the muscles aligned right. Make sure that we're coaching you to make sure that you're doing it correctly, that you're running correctly, that you're rowing correctly, step aerobics, you know, whatever the event is, as well as the proper shoes, you know, because you can go and buy any shoe off the rack at Academy or Dick's or wherever, but there are shoes and shoes out of each brand that are better for one person that might not work so well with another. So keep that in mind every time you go out there and you start to do a sport or you pick a sport. Ask your chiropractor. We can probably help best fit you to it. Following along with that, if someone is walking with a slight limp, or if one leg is shorter than the other, can that be corrected with adjustments? That's another good question, because yes, sometimes, and no, sometimes. What's happening there is that a lot of time it can be functional. And I've had a lot of women, people that have their pants hemmed, most guys don't really care, they'll just wear one side out. But when women buy slacks or dress pants, sometimes they have to have one side hemmed a little higher than the other just to make everything level so that one isn't touching the ground. And so they've just always assumed that they had one leg shorter. Unless you broke your leg when you were young, before the growth plates had closed up and you were as tall as you were going to get, or unless you had polio or some kind of a problem like that, your legs are probably anatomically correct, and it's a functional problem. And that function is typically in your hips, right where your hips join to the tailbone. And a lot of times that can be adjusted. However, obviously if you've had that for a while, just an adjustment alone isn't going to work. Your chiropractor is going to have to work with you to make sure that the proper muscles are being stretched and the proper muscles are being strengthened. And I want to hit on that just for a second. I know this is a tangent and it's off, but it seems to fit in here real well. Most people think that if they've got a tight low back or a weak low back, or their back hurts, that the best thing to do is stretch that. And that's what I get a whole lot of, is, well, it hurts here, so I'm going to stretch it. Or maybe your hamstrings, the back of your legs hurt, so they really spend a lot of time stretching it, and they wonder why they have to spend 45 minutes a day stretching it out. The issue is that most of sports medicine research at this point is saying that stretching is good when you've got a condition, but if you really want to make the change, it's strengthen the other side. So if you've got a bad low back, then you strengthen your stomach. If you've got an issue with your quads, the front of your thighs, then you need to strengthen the hamstrings behind. And the strengthening tends to help a lot quicker and does a lot better. So that was just a side point that I wanted you guys to get.